If you've been scrolling through endless pages of moving headlights, scrolling past the specs, watching video after video, and still feel like you're not sure which unit will actually make sense for your setup, this review is going to clear that up. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. I've spent the last few weeks talking to a handful of club owners, mobile DJs, and a couple of small venue lighting techs to see how the ADJ 360 tilt Jolt MFX actually performs when it's plugged in, aimed at a crowd, and asked to run for a night straight. First off, the 360 tilt is marketed as a multi-function fixture that can do everything from a vintage-style wash to a fast-moving jolt bar. The idea is appealing because it promises you don't have to buy two separate units, one for that warm, retro vibe and another for those sharp, kinetic effects you see in EDM shows. In practice, the real question is whether the compromises you make to get that duality hurt the things you care about most: reliability, ease of programming, and how it looks on a real dance floor. The most obvious strength is the preset library. ADJ has baked in 128 RGB and RGBL macros that you can pull up instantly from the built-in menu. In a live setting, that translates to less time fiddling with a laptop and more time focusing on the music. I watched a mobile DJ set up the unit in a 500 square foot warehouse, and with just a few button presses, he switched from a mellow, amber-tinted vintage side wash during the opening set to a high-energy jolt bar that synced with the bass drop. The transition was smooth, and the audience didn't notice any lag or glitch, something you usually only get from fixtures that have a solid internal processor. The tilt mechanism is another practical win. Unlike many moving headlights that use a full 540-degree pan/tilt system, the 360 tilt limits its motion to a half circle, which actually makes it easier to point precisely at a specific area without overshooting. For a bar that wants a wash over the bar top, while still being able to flash a quick bar effect across the dance floor, that limited range is a blessing. You can lock the fixture in place with a simple screw, and it stays exactly where you left it, no drifting after a few hours of use. Now, the vintage effect side. ADJ calls it vintage because the LEDs are tuned to emit a warmer, more saturated color palette reminiscent of old incandescent fixtures. In a small club that's dimly lit and already has a lot of wood and brass core, the effect can feel genuinely nostalgic. It's not a perfect replica of a 1970s par can, but the tone is close enough that it adds a subtle character without looking like a cheap LED replacement. One of the lighting techs I spoke with said the vintage side works best when you pair it with a low-key song. It adds depth to the room without overwhelming the other lights. The Jolt bar side, on the other hand, is designed for high-speed movement. It's essentially a thin LED bar that can sweep across the crowd in fractions of a second. In a high-tempo house set, that rapid motion can create the laser-like feel that many DJs chase. The key thing I observed was that the bar's brightness is decent for a venue of up to about 3,000 square feet, but you'll start to notice a drop in punch when you try to cover larger spaces or when you have other high-output fixtures competing for attention. If you're running a main wash from a 200-watt LED panel, the Jolt bar will look more like a decorative accent than a headline effect. One hidden trade-off is the power requirement. The unit runs on a single 120V line, which is convenient for most venues, but the internal driver can draw close to 30 amps at full output. In a tight rack, you'll need a proper power distribution unit to avoid tripping breakers, especially if you're stacking a few of these together. It's not a deal breaker, but it's something you have to plan for in advance, a mistake that some first-time buyers make and then blame the fixture for not working. Another practical limitation is the depth of DMX control. The 360 tilt offers basic channel assignments. You can control tilt, color macros, and the jolt speed, but you won't get the granular pixel-level control you find on high-end moving heads. If your lighting console is set up for complex cue stacks with fine-tuned fades, you'll have to accept a more on-off style programming for this unit. For many small venues, that's perfectly fine. For a touring production that wants to integrate this into a larger light show, you might find yourself hitting a wall. Who should buy it? If you're a club owner who wants one versatile fixture to cover both warm wash and kinetic effects, a mobile DJ who needs to travel light and still have a respectable visual toolbox, or a small venue tech who likes the idea of preset macros that can be swapped on the fly,